Hello, welcome to The Intersect, where academia, the DoD, and industry meet. I'm Matthew Butkovic, and today I'm joined by my colleague, Lauren McIlvenny. Welcome, Lauren.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me.
So, Lauren, you are someone that's joined the organization relatively recently, and you lead a very interesting body of work here, something that people would traditionally associate with CERT, the CERT Division, which is threat analysis. So I was hoping if you could just give us a brief introduction of the sorts of work that you do in threat analysis.
Yeah, so in threat analysis, we really have two specialties. So you have the vulnerability, which is a lot of what people associate when they think CERT or hear something like CERT CC. So these are the people who originally got it off the ground in terms of what are vulnerabilities, how to coordinate them, and it's something we still do today. And we're constantly even thinking of what the future of that should look like. How do you deal with things that are bug bounties? How are we different? So it's really cool work to get to come in and be with something that has that type of name recognition. And then the other side is malware expertise. So we have a deep history through malware family analysis, collecting malware. We have one of the biggest repositories that I know of. And just to have all that data and be able to draw on it to do analysis and figure out what's coming next is a really cool place to get to be.
Yeah, so it sounds like we have a catalog of a zoo full of really interesting malware, and then we take it apart and understand it to then prevent it right in the wild from then affecting someone negatively. So I was kind of wondering, who are our typical partners and stakeholders in that process?
Yeah, so in that process, a lot of the typical stakeholders and partners are what you would assume, the DoD, the IC, kind of leveraging that way to try to understand what's out there, is it being used against us, and how it's working and how we could effectively defend against it.
So it's a deeply technical pursuit. So can you describe the sort of folks that you employ in that mission?
So I think like the best are like the tinkerers, right? They see a piece of software and they're able to like just break it down into all the little bitty pieces and understand that this is how it works to this and kind of map it out. Just the people that really have that intellectual curiosity to like break things apart, maybe figure out how to put it back together, but definitely those types of folks are what we look for.
So people that like technical challenges, as you described, tinkerers, so people that are willing to experiment and maybe determine new and novel ways to either break things or put them back together.
Yep. Yeah, and essentially, too, to get to learn different areas, because sometimes you have malware that comes in that's very Windows-based, and then all of a sudden we're like below ring 0 with UEFI, right? And that was a total pivot for the team 6 months ago, and for them to get to dig in and understand it all and the different types of vulnerabilities and attacks that are being leveraged against it is kind of cool. So they get to constantly keep up, learn new things.
Yeah, so we're certainly great strides have been made in maturing the way that we develop software and the reliability of software, but unfortunately there's still flaws in software that result in vulnerabilities. And I think it's great that you have this mission of locating those things and then finding ways to fix them. It seems like we don't go very long without a new incident that reminds of us how important this really is. So I was hoping, Lauren, you could maybe explain a little of your path to the SCI. This is one of the things we typically explore. So I know you're not new to Western Pennsylvania, but you're new to the SCI. So I was wondering if you might give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, so background, grew up in Beaver County and then Mercer County, graduated from Little Greenville High School, and then went to Grove City College in applied math. So after that, had an internship at NASA, knew I wanted to do something with the government for the good. Ended up at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. So UARC, a little different than an FFRDC like the SCI, but spent 12 years there and got to do everything from test and evaluation to really jumping into the AI game at one point. And when I left, I was doing lots of publicly available information analytics in support of cyber operators, basically. So I had a little bit of the AI side, a little bit of the cyber side, looked and said, I want to come home to Western Pennsylvania, what's around here, and the SCI's reputation, they have both. And I think that's certainly right now is a special time to be in an organization that has both pieces, especially as we see things like the large language models coming out, ChatGPT. How do we understand how they work and how to protect against them and what vulnerabilities look like and this space? And
I'm very glad that you chose to come back to Western Pennsylvania. I feel very fortunate you've joined our team. You mentioned this being a special place, which it is, right? Working at FFRDC. And since you've worked for a number of special places. maybe the through line there is that what we do here at the SEI is in pursuit of making the nation more secure, which to me is really important. I worked in industry before coming to the SEI, and one of the things that attracted me was that national security mission, or really the national security mission with the overlay of working on really hard technical problems in this space. I know you're looking for people to assist you in that mission. So could you please describe for the folks in the audience the roles that we have available, and maybe the sorts of backgrounds that folks have that might be a match for these positions?
Yeah, so currently my director has 3 open positions with a 4th one opening up. So one is on the vulnerability side, so doing that vulnerability discovery, what's out there, coordinating the disclosures and the mitigations of those, so hopefully make it better for everyone. So that's one of the positions out there. I mean, we see that from everyone who has like deep IT knowledge to, honestly, we have philosophers on the team for like how these things should happen, game theory for even like how coordination and all the players work together. So just some really kind of neat things. Even thinking up, CVSS is one of the ways they look at vulnerabilities and how bad it is and how everyone goes out to patch it and kind of what priority order. And we got to say, I think it's missing some things. So we developed SSVC and get to see that now rolling out into practice as well. So really kind of the gamut when it comes to vulnerability work. I think you're going to hear me say that thread a lot about that intellectual curiosity, willing to dig in, learn things new things, because the vulnerability that comes across your desk may not be something you've ever thought about or known about. The other open position would be a malware researcher, kind of along the same lines. We have some work coming in that's malware and AI starting to collide as well. So we're looking for people to bolster the team, help leverage all of that malware zoo, as you called it, that we had, to understand more attributes about the malware, maybe what's coming next, and a lot of things along those lines. And then the third position actually we have is a software developer. So when we do a lot of this work, right, you need tools that are automated, that are there to stay. So we have Vince, which is a platform for the vulnerability disclosure work that we coordinate. So obviously that needs to stay up, and we need developers. And then same with MASS, when we're talking about the malware zoo, right? And we're collecting gigs upon gigs a day of malware and trying to analyze it in sync, and we're constantly coming up with new analytics. We need someone who can keep that stable for us. So we have a small team of software developers and looking forward to adding to it. And then the last one, sorry, you asked. So,
no, please, of course.
I've got a handful.
This is what we're here for.
Is an AI security researcher. So you heard me talk a little bit about this being a special place with having the AI expertise and the cyber expertise. One of the things is looking for those AI skeptics, the people who are like excited, they understand the technology when it comes to AI, but they also see some of the pitfalls and ways it could go wrong in terms of potential vulnerabilities that we may be mass introducing through the use of it, or even ways our adversaries might be thinking about attacking it and where they could inject malware along the process. So folks that want to come in and think about that.
Excellent. So it sounds like a really cross-cutting set of skills are required. You mentioned philosophers to AI engineers, and it sounds like you're looking for someone that is not necessarily just an AI enthusiast, but also applies critical thinking about the implications of AI. So that's great. Now, we've said AI a few times now, and it seems like AI is sort of the free space and bingo these days in conversations, but it's becoming so critical in so much of our work here, right? We have the 3 divisions, and each of those has a role, of course, with the AI division being the kind of the center of the gravity for the AI engineering. When it comes to making secure, reliable, trustworthy AI systems, CERT has an obligation to really assist with that, and your team is on the forefront of that. You mentioned an AI researcher. And I think that certainly there will be folks in our audience that will be attracted to that, applying what they know to the artificial intelligence challenge. You also mentioned the idea of below ring zero. So maybe for the audience, I was hoping to unpack this a little bit. If we think about a system, a computer system, an information system, you think about software, that's one potential source of risk. But another source of risk is actually those things that live in firmware. And we call that below ring level zero. Can you maybe explain our research there, Lauren, or our kind of nascent interest in that type of work?
So why we're really interested in that type of work is persistence. So one of the things is if you have an attack that goes there, there's no recovery. You like generally think like, oh, I'll just wipe my OS, I'll reinstall, like it will be fine, right? And that's not the case there. So we were looking at one of the UEFI below ring zero types that came out recently, and we said essentially if this would be attacked, you have about 300 million laptops that you might as well just throw in the garbage. And how do we avoid that, right? So that's why it's a big thread for us, trying to understand that really persistent, farther out. We know adversaries are interested in it. If you're reading anything on Black Lotus, that's out there. So how do we help?
I was just envisioning what a stack of 300 million laptops would look like, right? That's okay. So an important new avenue in securing information systems. And we're always trying to stay ahead of that threat actor. Yeah. A question about sort of the join between those things. So as we see systems become increasingly virtualized, it seems to me that these, as you described, the persistence of this threat is really important for us. So I think the audience needs to understand we can build scanners and tools that will identify and mitigate the risk of malware in the traditional sense, but it's far more challenging no matter how virtualized the system is if you're attacking the underlying firmware infrastructure. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's fair. And we actually have a couple blog series on that.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to go to SEINet blog and read, I'm by far not the expert on this. This is something new for me, being like background kind of in AI. So hopefully I did not say anything incorrect. But if you want to look up any of the blogs from VJ Seraph with Polly on the team, there's some really good tips to think about in terms of what is UEFI and then what's some ways we can start to mitigate this threat in the future.
Yeah, and you raise a really good point. So we have a very large catalog of reference materials, thought pieces, collateral on the website. So please do visit the SEI website if you're interested in this subject. It's one of those subjects in my mind it seems really niche at first glance. But what we're really saying is that the practitioners and the people that address these concerns are very, very specialized, but it's universally important, which I think is really interesting. And I think that's a one way to frame much of the work that we do here in the SCI, and one of the reasons I enjoy being here. Lauren, I was just thinking about if folks in our audience are hearing some of these things for the first time, if they're hearing, for instance, about these threats below ring level 0, what tips could you offer at this stage? What can folks do they can educate themselves? We talked about the SCI website. But are there defenses you'd recommend, or maybe ways to think about the risk from these sources?
Oh, that is still an ongoing hard challenge.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that makes UEFI also so dangerous, besides that it's below ring 0, is the fact that fixing it is not something your standard admin is going to understand. So it's very detailed if you can even fix it. And the steps that you need to take to understand if you're infected. There's some really good material out there actually from the NSA and CISA in terms of like, am I vulnerable? How do I even figure that out? And then if I've actually figured that out, which is not easy, what do I do next besides throw the laptop in the garbage?
Throwing the garbage seems like the last resort in all these cases, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's always what we hope is the
last resort. Are you really saying that you have a laptop you really don't like and want to get rid of? That's why I keep referencing throwing laptops in the garbage.
No. I just got a new laptop when I started here, and it's a pretty nice one, so I don't want to get rid of it.
Lauren, you mentioned bug bounty earlier. So bug bounties, of course, are the programs where you're paying folks, typically outside your organization, but sometimes inside your organization, a mix of the two, to identify vulnerabilities, flaws in software. Thoughts about sort of the current status of bug bounty programs, and if there's folks in the audience that are contemplating creating a bug bounty program, any tips for them?
So, I mean, I think it's great to think about it from a company, right, and be introspective and want to know where the problems are. Instead of being in that reactive mode to like, oh crap, some adversary just attacked and it's on the news and this is bad. So I think it's good from that standpoint. I will say a lot of times I get the question of like, how is the vulnerability disclosure work we do different? And it's really for us, at least, that we look across the program. So like, say you go and submit to Company X on a bug bounty site, they can choose to fix it or not. It's kind of like usually the communication's dead. And we kind of take it the step farther to be like, oh, well, if company X has that problem, we know company A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all use it. So we're going to help tell them to make sure it gets fixed as appropriate too.
Yeah, there's a common good in this, right? So if we think about ethical disclosure, for instance, right, the idea that it's the right thing to do to ensure that the community is aware of this. And that's a really interesting facet, again, of what we do here, which is for the common good. There's no competitive advantage in our work in hoarding this information, right? I also think it's really interesting, Lauren, that you're the keeper of the flame of the very thing that started CERT. So when Rich Pethia was manning the telephone back in 1988-89, right, what he was doing was getting calls from folks about malware. So in a sense, you're leading the most storied function that we have here at CERT. And that's one of the things that's great about working here. And I always say this when we do these broadcasts, is that you feel like you're part of something that has a long, proud history, focused on national defense, focused on innovation, and increasingly drawing on new elements like AI/ML. So if someone is contemplating joining this field, maybe they're not in a stage where they can apply for a job. Maybe they're an undergrad, or they're considering grad school, or they're a graduate student, or they're in the working world and want to pivot. What would you suggest that folks study or consult to maybe prepare themselves for a career in threat analysis, malware analysis?
Oh, that is a good one. So being someone who this is kind of a new for me too, on the SCI side. So it's so super exciting, as you just laid it out, to be like, you're at the place where it started, right? But it's also a super daunting challenge. So for me, it's been reading up on things like the coordinated vulnerability disclosure process, how that even works. So I think doing some of that, I think just going out and tinkering too. There's tinkering again, but there's a variety of websites where you can go through and you can actually get a instance that's vulnerable, and you can try to see where it's vulnerable and to develop exploits against it that are known. There's so many things. I mean, you can look up all the CVEs and all the repositories on GitHub. Please don't go, though, like crash your own home computer.
Yeah.
You should really think about that.
Do not create your own malware petting zoo,
No,
right?
no. Don't do that.
That's not a great idea.
Yeah. But, yeah.
So, Lauren, maybe a lighter question for you, right? So you're returning to Western Pennsylvania after quite some time away. What is something you missed about Western Pennsylvania and glad that you could reconnect with?
Oh, yeah, there's so many things. Food. Yeah. You would not think about it, but pierogies, being back to where those are a thing. So just a lot of the nostalgia factors. I think things where you're like, oh, my grandfather took me there when we were little all the time to eat, and you get to go there again. And I think a lot of it is the friendly people too. Being more of a transient area, between DC and Baltimore, you never really got to know folks. They were always coming in and out. Here, it's just different, right? Everyone waves you on at a stop sign, and I'm like, wait, why are you waving me on? You're coming downhill. You don't even have a stop sign, and I'm sitting at a stop sign, and you want me to go? So just, yeah.
Well, as a matter of threat analysis, right, the Pittsburgh left, right? If you're not from this area,
I don't think red lights exist at all. People just keep on going.
So Lauren, any events in the near future where folks may connect with you and the team that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, so I guess if you want to see me, if you're going to DEF CON, so I'm supporting AI Village, as CERT-CC is helping with the event that they're doing, looking at large language models and vulnerabilities in them. So it's actually going to be a little bit more of an education event, I think, on prompts. But that is a good place to find me in the upcoming.
Well, excellent. Well, I hope people do connect with you. And I'm so glad that you've elected to come back to Western Pennsylvania and be part of our team here at CERT. So thank you so much for your time today. If you are interested in roles here at the SCI, please have a visit to the website. And as always, please do consult our catalog of artifacts on a variety of topics. So thanks again, Lauren. I really appreciate you making the time today.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.